Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much, PJ, for having this session. Today we're going to talk about diaspora, but in rather unusual ways. When we usually think of diaspora, at least in the traditional sense, it was the exile of people from the homeland, and most traditionally the exile of the Jewish people from their own homelands. But now diaspora is used much more widely, and both our presenters today are going to stretch the subject even further. So we have with us today Benyamin and Ashmita, who have written very different books. Benyamin's book, Silent Journey, is a wonderful retelling of the story of Mariamma, his great-grandmother, who from Kerala, and the amazing travels that she undertook, the courageous travels she undertook, which nobody ever speaks about or ever spoke about. But he makes this discovery through a series of letters, newspapers, small articles, friends, family, and pieces together her life. We're going to start with Benyamin, and then we move to Ashmita, because Ashmita is an academic, as you know, and her book is very different and very interesting. It's Virtual Diaspora. She's a literature professor, and she looks at different literary texts, and we're going to particularly focus on the text today of many Bengali writers, including Tagore, Kunal Basu, Jhumpa Lahiri, and she talks about diaspora as a virtual diaspora where at times one even doesn't have to leave home, but feels the same emotions of loss and longing. So we're going to do that, 15 minutes with Benjamin and then 15 minutes with Ashmita, and then we open it for questions. So I'll start with you, Benjamin. You, in your book, take us on so many journeys, okay? One of the journeys that I found fascinating was your own journey on how you came to excavate your great-grandmother's story. So could you tell us about how you came to be fascinated and obsessed by this journey over a long period of time?
First of all, thank you and good evening, everybody. This is first time to Kolkata Literature Festival, and I am so excited to be here. This is not the only book about the diaspora or migration. There are some other books also I have written on migration. My God Days is based on migration, Jasmine Days, Al Arabian Novel Factory, and so many other books are based on migrations and diaspora life, because I was a migrant for almost 21 years in Gulf countries, so I know what is happening around the migration field and life. This book is actually written as a third part of the story based on my own village. There are another two books written in Malayalam, but those books are not translated into English. That's why you English readers didn't know about that one. The first book was about the period of 1954 to 1974. Actually, I wish to write the story of our village into a four-part, divided into 20 years each. I think every human life has a division of 20 years. There is a change after each 20 years. I think so. I don't know how you feel. So I divided the story into four parts. First part is from 1954 to 74. Second part is 74 to 95, almost 75 to 95. The first part is based on the church conflict on the Syrian churches. You know, in Kerala there are so many Syrian denominations, Syrian churches are there. Those churches are in conflict. In the base of a village and a home, how it is reflected in the society, that is the basic content of that story. Second part is about the conflict between the Communist Party and the church. You know that there was both, even Christian churches and the Communist Party is very dominant in Kerala. and both have their own uh, issues. And at the same time, in 80s, we have a liberation theology arose in across the globe, and how we can join together, Communist Party and church join together and work together for the people. The liberation theology is came from the Latin America. Certainly, something is happened in Kerala also, but at the same time, both party and churches thought that it will destroy themselves, so they separated. The story is how it is affected in a house or a village. Part of that one, I was searching for the third part of the story from 95 onwards. Uh, I researched a lot, and I accidentally I went through the church cemetery of our own church, because almost five generations are there even in my family there are five generations are in the same cemetery. So I found that in each tombstones, only men names are engraved. There is no women names are engraved in the tombstones. Then I said that what happened to our great grandmothers, where they vanished, why their names are not mentioned in the tombstones. Then I started to study their own history, and then I found that they were not such a housewives or not like that. They have their own history. They, they are very courageous people. They traveled across the globe. Uh, at the same time, I found the name Mariamma, the main character of the novel. She was the one who traveled to Borneo with the British military in the Second World War time. Even today, we don't know, many of us don't know where is Borneo. But in that time, she traveled to Borneo and worked with the British military, and in the far field, she was with them. Then I searched the story of Mariamma, how she traveled, where she reached, and where she vanished. Based on this one, the novel is based on Mariamma. Then another four generations of ladies. This is the story of Mariamma, and I found her from from that research where our grandmothers were
Yeah.
born and vanished.
Well, she's an amazing woman because not only does she go to Borneo, she actually dies in Africa. And through many um, coincidences, is able to find him. So it's a fascinating story about this woman who was tremendously courageous, leaving on her own a small village in Kerala to go to Madras, on to Sri
Singapore.
Lanka, and then Singapore, and then on to the Far East as a nurse. And it's not just the story of Mariamma as a nurse, but legions of women nurses have traveled across the world, mostly from our part of the world, from South India, to be nurses and played very heroic roles. Now, since you've said a little bit about how you came to her story, which was actually much more complicated in the book, because there were lots of ways you were gasping to see, oh, what's he going to find next? Because it was like a hide and seek, clue, one clue after another. But can you tell us a little bit about why she left her home, the quest to support her family, and the remarkable character that she portrayed under very difficult circumstances? And maybe you could also mention at the time how there was very little touch except through the sporadic letters, which sometimes didn't even reach with her family for decades.
As we know, in 1920s and 1930s were very difficult in Indian life because of great famine across the India. It was reflected even in the Kerala Malayali society, and they were also started migration to initially to Sri Lanka, then to Singapore, to Rangoon, Karachi, many other places, even to Calcutta, many other places they reached. Uh, and at the same time, in, from our part, we are from the southern part of Kerala, people are starting to migrate to the northern part of Kerala, that is the Malabar. In that period, it is a British ruled area. We were from the southern part, it is from Travancore. So people are migrating to other part of the Kerala, and there is hill stations, forest areas. They, they cut the forest and started cultivation. And at the same time, some courageous women are started to travel, as I told earlier, with military groups. Because in 1940, 1938, 39 onwards, uh, British military started to recruit the women for the nursing purpose. That that was Women's Auxiliary Territorial Service. WATS. Its name was WATS, and it is from India, even from West Indies, so many other places. They recruited nurses for the war field. This lady also joined to the WATS group. That time the salary was only 20 shilling. 20 shilling was how small it was. Still, they were traveled along with this group. And at that time, Singapore was along with the British territory. So we can travel to Singapore without any visa or something, but we need 100 rupees for a one person to travel to Singapore. But that was very huge amount. In that period, 100 rupees was huge amount. But for the nurses, it is not needed. So other than men, women are started to travel to Singapore, and at that time, Second World War started. Uh, they joined the military. Initially, they were in Singapore. Then they sent to the Borneo. The Borneo was attacked by the Japan force. There was a still huge struggle in Second World War time. Then after Second World War, she came back to Kerala for a short period. Then she moved to Africa. The second migration was to Africa, to Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia. Uh, Not only for medical field, there are so many other teachers also were there in that period from Kerala. Uh, she moved to Tanzania. Accidentally, she died there. This is the actually the story of uh, Mariama. But the migration of nurses was not stopped there. From that generation onwards, the girls from Kerala, our society, they started to going for the nursing job. Then they started going to European countries, initially at the African countries, then go to European countries, then to America in the Vietnam War time. They went to USA, then to Gulf countries. Even today also they are traveling across the globe to UK, Ireland, New Zealand, or Australia, or somewhere. So the story is telling about the other three generations also. Next generation, the other girl, woman names Gracie. She went to Africa, then to Europe, Germany. Uh, Next generation, the other lady went to Gulf countries, and now the latest from the latest generation, they moved to Australia. So four generation of nurses traveling is portrayed in this novel, and Mariama was the she initiated the travel. She was the inspiration for the all the generation. Even today, many girls are willingly studying the nursing job, nursing profession, and taking the profession nursing as a good profession, and they are traveling across the globe. She was the model of that generation.
Yeah, but what's also amazing is that nobody really knew much about Mariama in the village. She was really unknown, but what they did know is that she built an important family home, which they lived in for generations. So they only knew her as a bestower of something good for the whole family. But beyond that, very little was known. So it's a fascinating account. And it's one that really shows how we think, at least I'm ignorant about Kerala, but one thinks of Gulf and you think of the men going. But so much before, many women were also going, almost a century before. So it's a wonderful story, and the translation is a brilliant translation. So I'd encourage you all to take a look at Benyamin. Could you just read so they get a flavor for the writing? Because it's very simple, straightforward, but very compelling writing. So he's going to read just a brief bit, and then we'll move to Ashmita. No. It breaks, yeah, you read and go, because they're very different accounts.
This is the first letter she wrote to home from Madras. Initially, she went to Madras, joined the WhatsApp group, then went to Singapore, then to Borneo. Borneo is the island. Now it is the country. Brunei is there. Brunei, Indonesia, and Thailand. It is divided into three parts. The Brunei island is itself is divided into three now. For my dearest Appa and all others at the home to read. I reached here safely. I was comfortable as our John came to the railway station to receive me. He arranged decent accommodation for me as well. I started attending the voluntary aid detachment course for the next day. It is run by the white nurse named Teresa Williams. I was told that the job in the British military was guaranteed upon the completion of this course. Please pray for me so that I can get the job. Our suffering will soon come to an end. We won't need to flee, selling off our properties. It was good that we went to Pullur the other day. Pullur is the nearest railway station. Since the train stopped there for a long time, we didn't find the difficulty to hop in and to secure the seat. Maybe the Cherian must have updated you about all this. Cherian is her brother. It was good that he tagged along. When didn't he get back home? Was he tired of walking by the time he reached? Convey my regards to Ammachi and Sarama. Keep me in your evening prayers. We will prosper. I know for sure that there must have been some skeptical but moving around in the church. But my traveling to Madras, please don't bother about all that, Appa. None of those people would inquire if we have enough to feed ourselves 3 times a day. Please reply when you get time. Love, Mariamma, Madras. Thank you.
So despite all the social pressures, the ostracism, the speaking about her, she knew very clearly she was going to look for a job so she could actually reduce the economic pressures on her own family. So we're now going to turn to a very different kind of discussion, and that's with Ashmita, whose book, as I said, was about a virtual reality or diaspora. And I'm going to ask you to talk about why and how you extend the meaning of diaspora to explore pain and separation whenever and wherever it occurs. Can you talk about your notion of virtual diaspora, and why do you think it's important and compelling now in this transitory world?
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and this is such an, as I start responding to you, I cannot help mentioning my favorite philosopher, Sri Aurobindo, who I used a lot in this book because he was here in 6 foot by 6 foot jail cell. So reason that I wanted to, I'm not fond of black, but I wanted to walk in black because of that. So that is colonization, the pain that we have gone through. And now comes a different concept, diaspora. And diaspora, as you mentioned, that in Deuteronomy, it was associated with the Jewish diaspora, but now it acquired a huge connotation. And so we know about it, but I had to construct this term or a trope, virtual diaspora, because everybody gets homesick, but it is beyond that. And in this context, I want to refer to my previous monograph, Negotiating Capability and Diaspora, What is Philosophical Politics? I was not content just knowing about the philosophical theory of Amartya Sen, etc., or Martha Nussbaum, but I wanted to go beyond that. And so that made me create this construct. And you can see, I was thinking of your term liberation theology, got my attention. So it is a sort of overarching, I won't say philosophy, I will say magic wand. I was thinking, how do I describe this term? It is a magic wand to annihilate the pain, agony, and suffering of the people who are stuck abroad deliberately. And so this gives you a magic wand to come and go as you wish. And I extended it even to Kalidasa and his work Meghdootam, where the separation of the beloved and the lover is portrayed through or conveyed through the cloud messenger. Here, I think this is comparable to, the suffering of immigrants who happen to be stuck abroad, maybe with some noble mission, but they sorely miss their country. And it is also very autobiographical. I told my colleagues, it's a memoir in disguise, because the section I'm going to read will be from my father's account, because as a partition was a victim, and he suffered. And he suffered because he could not go back to East Pakistan. They migrated to India, which is now West Bengal. And I feel like I started mourning, just like him, while I'm abroad. And also it was written, it was specifically triggered by my mother's passing, which occurred during pandemic. And she didn't die in COVID, but I could not come. So this is a magic wand which will give you, a relief. And one more thing, it is everything I see in a global perspective. So it is a tool which I create in dialogue with Tagore. All of you know Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore, and Sri Aurobindo, who was here, and Pashi, Mamla, and also some Western philosophers who talks like Oriental philosopher. One of them is Bergson, and Henry Bergson's theory of memory, because we cannot create anything without memory. So how we go back through down memory lane. And so this is the way I created this magic wand, virtual diaspora.
So the diaspora here is even for those immigrants who've had to leave their home, maybe for economic purposes, for a better life like Mariama did. There is a connection, but nevertheless feel all the emotions that people in exile feel. Though these days it's slightly different, because I think coming back and forth is so much easier. You don't really lose touch in the same way of the homeland as Mariama did. Or for example, me also, I spent 30 years in the States, but in the old days, because I'm old, in the 70s, we really just got a few letters. We didn't have phones we could always pick up. We just couldn't just fly in and fly out like we do now. So I think that there's a whole range of those experiences of leaving home. But,
I think your book, would you call it more about diaspora like a diaspora in memoir?
Yeah, it's a diaspora memoir. It's more about the diaspora life and how they suffer and how they survived, and the journey of those periods. Nowadays we can fly to Africa in in 10 hours or maybe 5 hours, something like that.
Yeah.
That time they took 1 month or 2 months, and even flight. The one journey in flight, it was in a cargo flight. They are traveling, sitting in the floor. Such a journey was it to see
Thank you.
how difficult it was, how difficultly they reached in those places, how they faced the life in there. Even
Yeah.
in the Europe, when they reached, one of the member I read from that member, I insert some portions here also. Uh, in that they're telling that while they reach in the Europe, they don't know how cold it is. While they are seeing the the cold, the snow, they are thinking that something else is falling. They don't know what is snow from a Kerala women. They don't know what is snow. They don't know how to sit in the European closet. They sit in the top of the the seat and use it. That meant suffering was there. Even they don't have accessibility to the village. Maybe two months to take a letter to come and
Oh
receive
yes,
its
I have.
reply.
Yeah, I have
See
gone through that.
how it is. See.
Yeah, I've gone through
So,
that.
but Asmita, thank you. Asmita, let's move on because this is a very complex book and you draw on many, many philosophers and
Thank you.
literatures. But here, what I want you to discuss, because we're in Calcutta sitting here, I want you to talk to us about the literary figures like Jhumpa Lahiri, a daughter of Indian immigrants, and how through her writing and her sojourn in Italy lets you actually expand this concept of diaspora,
Yes.
where her identity as an immigrant is not in India, not in the US, but in a third country where she gets to travel.
Yes, this was wonderful to read her memoir because she. I'm trying to quote one of her lines from her memoir that those of you who don't have a country or place to return, they at least have to be able to write in words so they feel they are living on the earth. So she created, and I'll mention some of her favorite chapters, my favorite chapters from that memoir. One of them is called Impossibility. And she also said that you need to have a distance from where you are. And that's why she also created this distancing from her mother, for whom she wrote interpreter of melodies, namesake, and then she's confessing that I have pleased my mother enough. Now I need to explore my own identity. And that's what she does in this book. And I find it, she talks about solitude, impossible distance. And again, it takes me back to Rabindranath Tagore's song, Dure kothay dure dure, amar mon beray go, ঘুরে ঘুরে. So my mind is roaming around to the distant land. So she had to leave USA and she had to go to Italy to explore her identity or construct her identity in that philosophical realm, in her mind, imagination. And in the chapter Exchange, she talks about a translator who gives up everything, packs, and tries to live life from a suitcase because she has enough of life. So you see kind of like a solitary, philosophical sojourner and a baul even. I refer to Tagore and his concept of baul philosophy. He discussed in Religion of Man. So it is very much present. So she is a typical Bengali philosophical woman, and Calcuttans can't live, I'm sure, without philosophy.
Very good. So moving on from Jhumpa, because we only have another 5 minutes left, you also look at the work of Kunal Basu's Japanese wife and also Kabuliwala. And both you talk about, in the Japanese wife, where two people, we all know the story, we've seen the Aparna Sen's movie, they are actually lovers through letters they've never even met. But you call that you've constructed the concept, the pinnacle of a virtual diaspora for that, right? So can you talk about what it means to be this pinnacle, virtuality in a pinnacle, and also reference Kabuliwala as well, because you
Sure.
talk about that too.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for the very good question, because actually I came to construct the term virtual diaspora from Kunal Basu's book. I'll say the film. I saw Punashan's film, and that gave me. I was going to go to a conference, and by that time I already wrote my previous monograph, Negotiating Capability and Diaspora, and I was looking for something, that where mentally through reverie you can go back and forth to your homeland down lane of memory. So I was immensely grateful to this film and the book to provide me with that, to confirm that I can do that, I'm able to do that. So that's what I call the pinnacle of virtuality or virtual diaspora, where I brought in Kalidas's Megdutam as well. And speaking of Tagore, oh my God, this story everybody knows, and you wrote much beloved story. So, Kabuliwala, I would say that it was also, my father was also very fond of this story, and so was his father. And he used to tell me when he used to leave, his father used to embrace him and cry. So this is such a moving story. And here you see the universality manifest on different planes. So one of them is that Rahmat, who is coming down from Afghanistan to sell his goods, creates this virtuality, virtual diaspora, projecting his daughter into Mini. And but the story takes a sad turn, and at the same time you are seeing real diaspora because he really came. So this is a piece where real and virtual diaspora, they're occurring simultaneously. And so he was in prison. I think everybody's familiar with the story, I assume. And so at the end, when he comes back, Mini has grown up, and this is her wedding day. And Kabuliwala came to check and was surprised to see that this is Mini's wedding day. She has grown up. And the moment, that culminating moment occurs. I also would like to digress and say that I borrowed a little bit ideas of nomadism from Deleuze and Guattari, French philosophers. And so they describe a moment called bliss, and differentiating two terms, singularity and individuation. Complex but simple at the same time, which means that when you go beyond your personal desire, then you acquire that kind of bliss, and which is definitely present in Indian philosophy. You achieve that sense through ego transcendence. So Mini's father and mother, they step out of their petty desire, not petty, I would say, not selfish, it's a normal desire to delighting for their daughter's wedding, but they give this money to Rahmat to go back and join his daughter there. So I cannot imagine a better story. Of course, he's a Nobel laureate, Tagore, but this is amazing. And I also bring in here and sneak in another Western philosopher, Nietzsche, his idea of overman. So Tagore is very global, so his ideas have a lot of intersection.
So you can see this is a very complex set of essays that she writes on different literary texts. Not an easy read, wonderful students, I think, of literature. But because of time, could you just read a paragraph that you think may work well for this audience? And then we'll open it up for questions, because I think we have only 6 minutes left.
The section is called More on Virtual Diaspora from a South Asian Context of Partition. In this vein, I recall the Indian Bengali poet Jagadish Chandra Das, whom I have discussed in my previous anthology, Postcoloniality, Globalization and diaspora, what is next? As he resents the partition of India and the agony it inflicted, including estrangement from near and dear ones. As I have written, quote, the partition caused the separation, which caused the poet immense grief, and Shashi Tharoor, in his glorious speech, points it out strongly and clearly. The poet's grief that the earth and the sky can never touch each other is very significant, so are the lines. I'm going to offer you a translation of his poem, grieving his departure from his homeland due to the partition of India, in which he remembers each and every landscape once and still so dear to him. Quote, I'm alluding to 1936. A boy took a long walk, starting the journey from Maliati Gram, Gram is village, crossing Shohagi and the river Kachamati, trading along the road of the village Achrobari, resting under the tree at Napat, leaving the bazaar of Bhuiya, he arrived at his Thakur, the older sister's house. He rested there a little more. Then another river. Then comes the place Boikkerhati. Then treading along Rampur's Jamgach berry trees shade, and crossing that arrive the elementary school house of Nandigram. Then the boy jumping into the grandmother's book chest. The boy is in distress now, alas. There is no more resting book anymore where he can take refuge. The end quote. This is actually my father. The itinerary of the poet's boy's walk is the linchpin of the vignette, almost like Kalidas's Cloud Messenger's itinerary describing the journey of the cloud to his beloved in Alkapuri. Here the poet deftly portrays the favorite places he had as a boy and the paths he treaded to reach his grandmother. The journey haunts us with the beautiful and melodic unknown names of places. The places reside in 1936 as part of India proper, then in East Pakistan after 1947. By the time the poet is mourning this journey, it is 1992, almost 60 years later. Maliati Gram was then part of the districts of Maimanshing. Maimanshing was part of India, later to become East Pakistan, then Bangladesh. The itinerary culminates in an onrush of emotion as the boy commemorates his grandmother and his tragic deprivation. He cannot return to the phase of life anymore, being estranged by time and place both. I call it the supreme moment of virtual diaspora as the poet is traveling there through his visionary mind, despite the pain.
We just have about 2 minutes left, so could we have a couple of questions for either of the authors here? Any questions? Any questions? Okay, since you don't have any questions, maybe I could just end with each of you saying one or two things you would like very briefly for the reader to take away with them from your book. And then you can do the same.
Certainly, our all migration histories and studies are based on men travel. And actually, we have to think about how women traveled and how they reached across the globe. Even in the far end of Arctic area of Canada, or in a Bedouin village of an Arab village, or in an African village, or any other places, they reached initially. Then the family went. We mostly and widely we think that men are traveled initially and then the family followed. No, in some most of the cases, women traveled first and then the men followed. Only exception is in Gulf migration. Gulf migration, men are traveled. Even though in the Gulf countries, these nations reached in 1932. The oil found out in 1925, and they started to migrate. Not migration. It is a another type of travel, but they reached in 1932. So we have to think.
The role of women
Yeah.
in being leaders in migration. Great. And another very, just, we have hardly any time, so just quick wrap up.
Okay, so one line, and this is to pay homage to women again. The song of and all the Calcuttans would love it, song of Lata Mangeshkar came humming in my mind as I was striving to formulate the conclusion of my very precious book, which holds in the crucible of pain an immigrant suffers from separation from his or her home or motherland. I heard, প্রেম এসেছিল একবারই নীরবে, love came only once, which immediately triggered the onrush of memories of my mother as she used to sing that song while I was very little in India, in our Calcutta home in College Street. It is all about memory, memory which brings to valorize so much. So I would say that to carry this idea on your mind, with your mind, beyond this group, I want you to folks to think of virtual diaspora as a magic wand, and you can create it anytime you suffer a separation, exile, pain, and through memory. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both the speakers and to the audience. Yeah.